Good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, April the 7th, and I'm going to call our meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. We're going to start with a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the land acknowledgement. The municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mississauga Anishinaabeg traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Peoples as rights holders and stewards of the lands and waters in which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respect to elders, past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions towards truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, strengthening ties with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. We do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. Moving on to the next item, does anybody have any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? I note that none were received in advance of this evening's meeting. And I also just want to make an announcement that Councillor Darrell is not with us this evening because he is under the weather. Moving on to item number 3, correspondence 3.1, the Daniels Corporation regarding From the Ground, a municipal movement to addressing housing affordability. I believe that Council has had an opportunity to read this letter. Essentially, it is an invitation to join a movement to engage municipalities across the country in efforts to address the affordability crisis that, of course, is impacting so many of our communities. And the letter is addressed to both myself and to the Council to come together into this movement in, I guess, a twofold process, one can say. One is to consider selling or leasing land for local not-for-profit housing providers, and also to join with other communities across Canada for this movement and program. And so, before I say too much more on it, I know that Councillor Todd would like to say a few words about this particular letter. Certainly in theory, I'm very supportive of this. I think we're at a critical stage right now in the municipality where we're still dealing with our land inventory and with the policy of how we're going to dispose of our surplus lands. And I know that our solicitor is working through policies around that, and so it may be premature for us to be agreeing to any immediate land deals for this kind of movement, but I'd like you to speak to it, Councillor Todd.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad that this was elevated so that council can have a look at it. I also agree. I think the initiative here is excellent. I think the intent of it is wonderful, and I also agree that I think before we sign on, we have some other things that we need to have a look at. One of the other things that I know for myself, I would like to be able to ask questions, interact, and would very much like to speak to Mr. Cohen. So one of the things that I would like to do, and certainly I have an alternate motion for this, but I would like to be able to invite them in to do a delegation. So not only, can I ask questions, but I'm sure other councillors have questions, and we'd all benefit from hearing those answers. But would love to hear from any other councillors before putting forward the other motion.
I think that's a terrific idea. Did you want to actually put a motion up so that folks can chat to it, or
100%.
we can have a discussion around this idea?
Folks have got my back here, so it's going up on the screen. So the motion that I want to recommend is that the letter from the Daniels Corporation regarding From the Ground, a municipal movement to address housing affordability, be received for information, and that council direct staff to invite Mitchell Cohen, CEO of the Daniels Corporation, to appear before council as a delegation to present this initiative at the earliest available opportunity, and that staff schedule this delegation as a priority on the relevant council meeting agenda.
Okay, so we have a mover for that. Councillor Less, would you like to second that? Okay, so we have a mover and seconder and discussion. Any comments on this? Everybody, yeah, Councillor Mink?
Yeah, I think most of my questions and stuff will happen either then or depending on what direction we give at the time. But I immediately had a lot of questions regarding this, and it sounds great, but I mean, there's a ton of questions, especially when this is municipal, publicly funded land, right? So, yeah, I don't oppose the motion to have them come and present, and then we'll go from there based on what we hear.
Well, it sounds like everybody's on the same page with this, so we'll look forward to this invitation should we get a vote all in favor. So I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is passed, and we'll look forward to having the delegation where we can have a more fulsome conversation. So thank you, everyone. Moving on to 3.2, the Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing and Homelessness meeting notes of March 26th. 2026. Councillor Clare, would you like to speak to this matter?
Thank you. Just as a normal order of business, we always do bring forward our meeting notes to report back to this council that supported the establishment of the task force and appointed Councillor Todd and I to sit on that task force representing Port Hope. On this particular set of minutes, though, I did just want to draw attention, because it's very timely in light of the previous correspondence, that at our most recent meeting, we had a presentation from Habitat for Humanity in which they outlined a variety of types of partnerships they can engage in with municipalities in order to develop new affordable housing. And I wondered whether our CAO, I'm not sure if it's the CAO or a municipal solicitor, would be better positioned to answer, just to speak to if a group like Habitat or another community housing partner was interested in entering into a discussion with us about a parcel of land that's identified for affordable housing in our land inventory. What would be the right step or channel for them to initiate that conversation?
Okay, we'll turn it over to our solicitor.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Clare. So for that type of request, would recommend going through the planning department. We are working on the land surplus disposition policy, expected to come forward in May. But that is, and there is a process in that policy, proposed policy, that will guide general members of the public for inquiries to purchase land. But for this type of question, I would suggest going through the planning department, just because there's additional considerations that should be given to those requests.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Is there anything else that you wanted to raise around this? Okay, so the recommended motion is to receive this for information. Can I get a mover and seconder on this? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by Councillor Mink. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on then now to items for consideration, and we're going to start with our presentation, 4.1, presentation by Alexandra Silagi, and I'm sorry if I've mispronounced that, Silagi, I'm hoping, but I'd like that corrected for me if I haven't. Impact Assessment Officer on behalf of the Integrated Assessment Team for the proposed new nuclear at Wesleyville project, Impact Assessment Agency of Canada Integrated Assessment Process, initial project description. And I note that this presentation is being done online for us today, so I'll turn it over for that to start. Alessandra, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
It was very close. It's Silagi.
Silagi.
I know it's a tricky one.
No, Silagi. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us today. Oops. Is everything shown correctly on my screen?
Yes, it is. We see it perfectly.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm an Impact Assessment Officer with the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, and tonight I'm here with Julie Lowry, our panel manager for the proposed new nuclear at Wesleyville project, and Candida Chanchi, Director of the Review Panels Division. We also have our Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission colleagues, Amy Rupert and Nicole Simon. I like to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking from Montreal on the unceded traditional territory of the Mohawk Nation, a gathering place for many Indigenous peoples. So thank you so much for having us present at the Committee of the Whole today. The purpose of this presentation is to recap who we are as IAC in the CNSC, the proposed project, and our integrated assessment process. We will then review the key issues submitted by Port Hope covered in our summary of issues and go over the next steps in the planning phase, which are the integrated guidelines. So I'll quickly recap who we are as the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada and the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. IAC is, well, the role of IAC is to lead federal impact assessments on major projects in Canada under the Impact Assessment Act. We are supported by a federal impact assessment committee of technical experts composed of other federal departments and agencies, and we work with provincial, territorial, and Indigenous jurisdictions to achieve the one project, one review. IAC is also responsible for public engagement and consultation with Indigenous peoples. I will turn it over to Nicole from the CNSC for a brief overview of their role.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Nicole Simon. I am a Senior Licensing Officer in the Advanced Reactor Licensing Division at the CNSC. And as mentioned, with me, my colleague, Amy Rupert, is an Environmental Review Officer, also with the CNSC inside of the Environmental Review Division. So just as a brief overview of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, we are the sole nuclear regulator throughout the life cycle of the facility, any proposed nuclear project. So throughout this entire life cycle of a proposed Class 1 nuclear facility or Class 2 nuclear facility, we are responsible for regulating the use of nuclear energy and materials to protect health, safety, and to protect health and safety, security, and the environment to prevent an unreasonable risk to health of persons or to the environment itself. We're responsible for implementation of Canada's international commitments on the peaceful use of nuclear energy, reporting on behalf of the Government of Canada to the International Atomic Energy Agency, for example, and we are responsible for disseminating objective scientific, technical, and regulatory information to the public as well. And we do this through the administration of the Nuclear Safety and Control Act, or the NSCA. Back to you, Alessandra.
Thank you. Next, we'll look at the proposed project for those that might not be familiar. So Ontario Power Generation, OPG, is proposing the construction of a new nuclear power plant in the municipality of Port Hope, Ontario. As proposed, the new Nuclear West Deville project would provide up to 10,000 megawatts of new nuclear generating capacity and operate for 78 years. This generating capacity is anticipated to qualify as a designated project under the Impact Assessment Act. Next, I'll turn to how we work together on integrated assessments and the importance of an integrated assessment process. So the integrated assessment process is multi-year and will result in a decision being made about whether to proceed with a project and a decision about a license to prepare site. The planning phase was launched on January 12th with the proponent submission of their initial project description. We're currently at around, I want to say, day 80 of the 180 days. So we're still in the first phase, as you can see here in the yellow star, before proceeding to any other phase in the process. To provide an overview of the planning phase, as mentioned, we received the proponent's IPD and subsequently had our first 30-day public comment period. We provided the proponent with a summary of issues on February 20th and posted the proponent's response on the registry on March 27th. We announced IAC's determination that an integrated assessment is required and is referred to a review panel last Thursday on April 2nd. We posted the draft guidelines and the draft plans today on April 7th, which also starts our second 30-day public comment period until May 7th. And finally, we reach the 180 days of the planning phase in early July if the proponent does not pause or suspend the timeline, in which the final integrated guidelines, the final plans, and the notice of commencement will be posted to the registry. In the next couple of slides, we'll cover how we address the key issues in Port Hope's comments on the initial project description in the summary of issues. So the text here is pulled directly from the summary of issues, and the bolded parts are key issues that were noted in the municipality's IPD comments. The summary of issues is a federal document that is meant to capture and reflect a number of related concerns on the project from all comments we received. So we understood your points on the potential impacts to water quality and quantity. The points on housing and prices were recurring for several other municipalities and the public. The concern on the potential strain on municipal services, transportation networks, and emergency services were other common issues we saw from the public, other municipalities, and groups. We understood the points on built and cultural heritage, as well as the loss of access to recreational areas. The next step in the planning phase are the draft tailored integrated guidelines. The next few slides will go into further detail on what they are. So the integrated guidelines inform OPG what information needs to be provided and how they need to collect and analyze that information for their project for the impact statement. Some key sections that are in the draft guidelines include biophysical environment, health, social, and economic conditions, and some others you may see here. The draft guidelines are currently available on our registry page and are open for comments until May 7th. And I'll turn it back to Nicole for the license for a site application.
Ontario Power Generation, as mentioned before, has also applied for a license to prepare the site as part of the integrated impact statement and the initial project description as well. So part of that is a key component of that is the evaluation of the site for potential nuclear development, which we are working with our IAC colleagues here on as well as, and that the impact statement itself will serve that purpose. Excuse me. But the other portion that we have is the actual application for the license to prepare site itself. That is entirely under CNSC staff's responsibility, and it has a set of other criteria that the proponent has to meet as well in a number of what we call safety and control areas that are listed on the screen and the ones that are applicable to this particular licensing phase. Excuse me. So in addition to meeting the expectations outlined in the draft tailored impact statement guidelines, the OPG, or Ontario Power Generation, also has to provide descriptions for how they are qualified to do the work that they're proposing to do as part of the license to prepare site. And they have to satisfy the CNSC Commission that they are qualified to do that work, and in doing so will carry out and ensure that they will prevent any unreasonable risk to human health, the environment, and non-human biota as well. So we have a number of other requirements that are in addition to overall site characterization or site evaluation. For example, I'll just pick out a few here. The Ontario Power Generation must describe how they are going to conduct their business. So they have to describe, for example, what we call their management system overview, and they have to describe their procedures and policies and programs that are in place to be able to control those activities. They have to describe and do some kind of characterization for external hazards to the site that is proposed, be they for external flooding hazards from the river, from Lake Ontario itself, fires, external hazards and malevolent acts as well. That's also included in that. They have to describe their radiation protection program and what to do if they find orphan sources or any kind of radioactive contamination in their early site exploration activities and site preparation activities as well. And two of the other big components here are environmental protection. So we do expect the proponent to put in place an environmental protection program, even at the license to prepare site stage, that describes how they are going to meet the objective of the Act to protect the environment as well. So we do expect them to put in place programs for monitoring of groundwater, monitoring of air effluents from anything that's required to do any of those site preparation activities, such as diesel exhaust fumes, any kind of like chemical spills, that kind of thing. That stuff is all described in the environmental protection program as well. Finally, emergency management is another key component of the site preparation phase and determining whether or not the proponent has successfully and adequately evaluated the proposed reactor designs so that they can be operated safely within design goals and within radiation protection objectives, and whether or not the proposed facility, can be evacuated if absolutely necessary within a reasonable time period in accordance with the Provincial Nuclear Emergency Response Plan and the Federal Nuclear Emergency Response Plan. So I will pass it back to IAC. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. So some things, I will outline some things that the integrated guidelines can and cannot do. They can request information to understand the environment and community, the project and its components, potential project effects and cumulative effects. They can also identify ways to minimize negative project effects and maximize positive ones. And they can focus on the assessment on key issues of greatest importance and concern. They cannot, however, force the proponent to change, stop, or significantly delay their project. They do not approve or provide pre-approval for the project. And finally, they cannot provide instructions to parties other than the proponent, such as provincial ministries or federal departments. So we'd like to note some upcoming engagement we have in the Port Hope area. As noted, our public comment period on the draft guidelines and our draft public participation plan started today up until May 7th. We'll be housing these documents at a few locations in Port Hope, such as the Town Hall and the Mary J. Benson Branch Library. We'll also be having it at OPG's Nuclear Discovery Center. I do want to note an error here. It's supposed to be 15 Toronto Street, not 10. And then we'll also be in person this week. On Friday, we'll be at the Jack Burger Sports Complex for an open house where we invite everyone to come in and ask us your questions between 2 to 8 p.m. And then on Saturday, very excitingly, we will be at the Float Your Fanny Down the Ganney event. And of course, we'll have our 2 virtual information sessions where our registration links are available on our registry page. Thank you so much again for having us today. This is our contact information, address, phone number, and email address. And finally, I'd like to end you off with some additional references. If ever you're wondering how to put your questions together, your questions or comments for the integrated guidelines, we have some potential environmental effects here for water, air, and land. And finally here for some social, health, and economic effects. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here and for the presentation. I also do want to acknowledge that Leo Deloyd and Dr. Carolyn Deloyd are joining us virtually and are available for any clarifications and answer any questions, or they may actually want to ask some questions themselves. But I'm going to kick off because I've got some questions here. Quite a few questions, but I think I'll start with 2 general questions for the presenters. I want to bring to your attention presentation slide number 18, integrated guideline highlights, and the integrated guidelines and request comments on effects assessments, without actually explicitly mentioning that the guidelines focus on adverse federal effects. So how and when are the adverse municipal effects going to be assessed, if not part of this process? Effects in relation to things like land use planning, natural heritage, transportation, complete communities, and the list goes on and on. But really the point is, whose effects are you looking at, and why aren't municipal effects front and center here? And just related to this is the fact that we had specifically mentioned the importance of Lake Ontario, but that does not appear to have been carried forward anywhere into the guidelines. So if we can get some clarification on that general question and, specifically in relation to Lake Ontario, and I'm sure there's many other omissions, only because I don't really see the municipalities being central to this process. So I'd like a little bit of answer to this and some conversation around it as well.
Thank you for that question. I'll pass it over to Julie or Candida to respond and provide that clarification.
Hi, everyone. Candida Chianchi, Director of the Review Panels Division at the Impact Assessment Agency. So the Impact Assessment Act, which is our federal legislation that indicates what is required to be reviewed, really is, to the mayor's points, the scope of the assessment really is focused on those adverse effects in areas of federal jurisdiction. So that is the scope in which this assessment is going to be carried out. Having said that, there are other, in terms of what you were just laying out as some of the concerns, there is a bit of overlap there in terms of, emergency planning. There is that overlap with CNSC's mandate in terms of what they would be requiring to look at. And then as well as, archaeological and heritage resources are other aspects that there is overlap in terms of federal jurisdiction on that, but it wouldn't cover the other elements, municipality that you're mentioning.
So I'm just going to follow up and make sure I fully understand that there is no consideration for either municipal adverse effects or, for that matter, provincial adverse effects unless they're actually in areas of overlap with federal jurisdiction.
That's correct. In terms of this particular undertaking is a nuclear project, which is all of the project in and of itself then is considered a federal undertaking. So really any effects that result from this project would be a federal effect. In terms of the fact that it's a federal undertaking because it's a nuclear and nuclear is under federal jurisdiction. So there are anything that the project would have a result in an effect, we would need to look at that's covered under our legislation in terms of the scope of the effects that are to be considered.
So I think there's an important distinction between that which is under federal jurisdiction and that which actually has an impact on our community, that is the municipality of Port Hope. And I'm not sure that anybody around this table is going to be satisfied if the actual effects on this particular jurisdiction are not front and center throughout this assessment process. Anyway, I'm not sure you've got an answer to that, but I'll turn it to some of my other colleagues for questions and comments. I do have a couple of other questions that I want to ask. Anyone else want to? Councillor Todd.
Thank you. To be honest, my question may actually just be a rephrase of yours, so I appreciate the fact that this assessment doesn't look through the lens of the municipality. Is there something in the process that does? I suppose that's for you, Candida. Yeah.
No, that's okay. So the intention of the process really is to bring to bear what the key issues are that are being raised by municipalities, members of the public, Indigenous nations, and communities, and that all parties that are involved are showing an effort to reasonably addressing them. So, in the particular case where it may not be specifically a factor that's being looked at under the assessment, having those conversations with the proponent of how that would be addressed, or if there are municipal processes that applies that these issues can be addressed in that manner, are the other avenues or mechanisms with which to do that. But there is a process in which this process is meant to be to hear what all of the issues and concerns are associated with it, and being able to have a path forward on addressing those issues.
Councillor Todd, you look like you want to have a little follow-up.
I do. Thank you. Thanks for reading my face on that. So maybe said another way, if stuff comes forward from community or from municipality through the process of concerns, but the federal agency looks at it and goes, well, that's not really a federal concern. Does it then get dismissed, or how does it then, or if it doesn't get dismissed, how does it get integrated and addressed?
And typically, what I've seen from other processes is that we turn to the proponent to see how are they addressing those concerns for the social acceptability and social license of a project. But also those views are heard throughout the process. So a review panel in this case would, make sure that they have reflected all that they have heard and put that forward to inform the decision maker's decision at the end of the day, whether it is in the public interest to go ahead with the project. So there are mechanisms in which the views can be heard and whether there's been an effort by the proponent to address those concerns or not is taken into account throughout the process in that way. It just might not be something that we at the end of the day could condition because it's not a federal effect. So that is our limitation with the legislation, is we have to be looking at areas in which at the end of the day we could condition onto the proponent to address any of those effects with mitigation or with other mechanisms in which to make the effects less. So we wouldn't have that ability to put on the proponent those conditions if it's not tied to an adverse federal effect.
Councillor Clare.
Thank you. I guess this is sort of a similar concern or question is just I recognize that we are, as the municipality, participating in the impact assessment process, but I also note that our submission was one of 800 and there does not seem to be any provision for weighting of that input, given that we represent the municipality as a whole and not just an individual, given that we're the most impacted community, whereas I know there's other municipalities who also wanted to weigh in. So that's a bit of concern to me. And so I appreciate that we are maybe being singled out by nature of you being here to delegate today. But I would also point out that the guidelines that we might be asking questions about today were only posted today. We haven't even been given a reasonable amount of time to review those documents in preparation for asking questions this evening, which means we essentially as a council are now relegated to every other member of the public to come out to one of these public events and essentially try to ask these questions, say, at a community event like Float Your Fanny. So I have a little bit of a concern around the timing of that. But my question is about, when I look at, I have briefly scanned some of the documents that were posted today. And I did want to just ask about these additional, the tools that are listed for public participation in the process. And I notice there's a variety, mostly online, but these in-person sessions. I'm curious because they specifically say to the communities most impacted or most likely to be affected, sorry. Is that limited to Port Hope, or will that also include some of the neighboring communities? And how do community members best stay informed of when these public participation opportunities are going to arise? Is it through emailing and being on a list? Do they have to register as a party? If you could just publicly share some of that, because I know there's people in the audience today who are looking for that information.
Just waiting for a response
Yep.
to that. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. And my apologies, I was having a difficult time coming off mute and video. So thanks for that question. So the language in the posting is standard language that we use in all our public notices about the potentially affected communities, because the activity that we're doing right now, and we did previously going out into community, is to learn. We don't want to presuppose what communities are impacted and what the impacts are. We're coming out into the community to ask these specific questions. So we do have a session. Yes, I'll be there with a few other folks in person for Float Your Fanny down Legani as a opportunity to speak to people. As well, we have sessions set up in Northumberland County and Durham region. So our intention here is to get out into the community and hear these questions, concerns, and start to learn a little bit more about how this project could be impacting the community.
I just wonder if you can also answer the part of the question about how do people stay on top of these opportunities? What mode of communication are you using? And back to Councillor Clare's question, do people have to sign up? Is there one place where everything is posted? How do people find out about this, given that these are really short timelines and, you know, people aren't getting a lot of runway here to know what the opportunities are for public engagement?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we do have our registry website, which all information on the project is posted there as it becomes available. If folks would like proactive outreach on it, they can sign up for the distribution list, and we have shared all of our public outreach information with the municipality's social media. So we do have a social media campaign as well. The public comment period did start today and runs for 30 days. This is part of our legislated timelines. So it is quite tight. And that's why we're coming out to the community, and we're also offering 2 virtual information sessions.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Clare? Okay. I'm going to just proceed. I've got a couple of other questions for you here. The integrated guidelines document states that the impact statement must address a description of change to the project that may be caused by the environment. What exactly does this mean? Does this mean the economic, social, biophysical environment? What anticipated changes to the project may be caused by the environment in this kind of wording? I'm just trying to understand what this wording exactly means.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the way it's phrased right now is, we're looking to explore what that means, like what potential changes to the environment could have an impact on the project. But this could be things that are what would be a good example? Like if there's change to soil stability from a severe weather event, or if there was an earthquake in the area, and what kind of changes could potentially impact the project. So this will be something that will be assessed during the impact assessment phase.
Okay, and I see the CAO is trying to get my attention, so I'll turn it over to the CAO, and then I do have one last question.
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to Councillor Clare's question about, the timing of this. Yes, it's coincidence that they're delegating today, and the timing coincidental that the submissions dropped today. We were aware that they were coming on the 7th. It is staff's intent, particularly through Leo and Carolyn Deloitte, to bring a staff report on April 21st to Council to have a fulsome discussion. That'll give staff time to review it. It gives Council time to review it. We're trying to get ahead of the May 7th deadline for the ending of the comment period. So we will be coming back to Council.
Thank you for that clarification. I think that's helpful. And then just my final question is just really about the relationship between this impact assessment and the separate Indigenous impact assessment that's being undertaken by rights holders, if you can speak to that.
Sure. I can take this one, Candida, again. So the way that our legislation is also formed is that there's the ability to accept and recognize Indigenous-led assessments. And so we understand from conversations with Michisagi that is their intention, is to carry out their own Indigenous-led assessment. And we're still in conversations about, the scope of that and what that looks like. But there is the ability for, Indigenous-led studies and information and their Indigenous knowledge to inform the impact assessment. And so discussions of the timing of when that might be in sort of concurrent with this process and when that information might come in to inform decision makers is currently a conversation that we are having with them. But like I said, there is that ability in the legislation to take that into account if there are Indigenous nations that wish to carry out their own independent studies that could inform the conclusions and recommendations of the panel, as well as inform the decision makers on what impacts there may be on Indigenous rights and what Indigenous knowledge can be taken into consideration to also help inform what would be the appropriate mitigation measures for mitigating any effects from the project.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Less.
Briefly, would the municipality have the same rights as you've just described?
So the municipality would have the ability to, as the CAO mentioned as well, like there's many opportunities to participate in the process and for any participant really truly to carry out their own information and provide that information throughout the process as they see fit. We do take into consideration everything. To an earlier comment, there's no like specific weighting on different comments. Everything is given its due and fair consideration. It's very diligent that decision makers will go through all of the information that is provided to them to make the best decision. We've accepted different studies and information in the past that have been carried out by external parties or by municipal governments in the past. So that's definitely something that can be and is part of this process that is accepted.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from around the table? I think obviously we're going to look forward to that staff report coming to us so that we can continue having a conversation around this very important topic and issue. So thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for the Q&A period. The recommended motion is to receive this for information. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Less, seconded by Councillor Todd. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Moving down our agenda, I note that we have a lot of sort of housekeeping administrative reports in front of us this evening. Moving on to 4.2, Report ES 0526, RE 2025 Annual Performance Reports for the Port Hope Wastewater Treatment Plant and Sewage Collection System. Does anybody have any questions or comments around this particular report? Seeing none, the recommended motion is listed on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder for this? Moved by Councillor Todd, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to 4.3, Report FIT 0326, reappoint Christine McKinnon as Deputy Treasurer. Does Council have any questions on this? Can I get a mover and seconder for the recommended motion on the agenda? Moved by Councillor Less, seconded by Councillor Mink. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to 4.4, Report FIT 0426, re-donation for Climate Action Plan. Does Council have any questions or comments around this? Great news story. Councillor Clare.
Yeah, just to say this is so welcomed. This has been something that this council has championed right since our very first meeting, and to have received a letter addressed to council endorsing that work and making this contribution to be directed as council sees fit to initiatives in our climate action plan, I think is just fantastic. I hope we see more of this kind of engagement from residents. I did want to bring forward a slightly tweaked motion, if that's okay, for consideration by council, just in light of the fact that the donation was, and in the letter from the donor, it did say at the discretion of council. I wondered whether we wanted to specify that a report come back to council or not. I know staff, it's a small, it's not a monetary amount that would usually necessarily come back to council, but given that it was specifically in the wording of the letter, I wanted to raise that as a possibility. And I also wanted to add some language, given that it is something this council has championed, that we try to get some of that fund, those funds allocated within 2026 during this term of council. And to that end, I wanted to add some language to get that ball rolling by referring it to the EAC and staff to collaborate on a spending plan in accordance with the donors' wishes.
Thank you, Councillor Clare. And just before I pass it on to Councillor Mink, do you have a revised motion prepared? I do. Okay, so before we get there, Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So along the same lines, thank you, whoever this donor is. That is obviously very generous, and there's obviously a lot of thought put into that. People don't usually just make those decisions. Somebody is out there obviously following and closely connected to what we're doing. I think when there's a donation of this amount, I think it's very important that we do something very special too. It doesn't just get filtered into operating expenses along the lines of climate action, but there's actually something to point to that these funds have been used for. So that would be my hope. I don't know what that is at this point, but I think that's very important that the donor can actually see where those donations went.
Thank you for that, Councillor Mink. And just saying, I hope that this is precedent setting for many more different initiatives that can be coming forward from the public as well in terms of funding and support. And we do have a really generous community, and we've certainly seen that time and time again for many different initiatives. So at this point, I'll ask for the alternative motion to be shown. So everybody can get a chance to read it. Councillor Clare, would you like to read it out?
Yes, and I'll just with a caveat that if council did want to specify that we wanted it to come back to council, we could also, I had also provided a second wording that included that language if that's what we wanted. So be it resolved that council directs staff to accept the $50,000 donation with gratitude, and that the matter be referred to the Environmental Advisory Committee to collaborate with staff in developing a spending plan aligned with the Community Climate Action Plan, and that further any unspent funds at the end of the year be transferred to a reserve to be applied in the future for their intended use. So it's just the middle part and the gratitude.
Do you want to show us what the other wording was that you were contemplating?
Oh, sure. Sorry, the clerk can't open that program right now. Sorry, the word would be after climate, aligned with the Climate Action Plan, to be brought back to council no later than July 2026. And that timeline was me hoping that we get giving enough time to think through the plan, but also giving us some time to action that money before the end of this term of council.
Thank you for that, Councillor Clare, to move that. And certainly I like this idea very much in the timelines, because we have had monies previously that didn't get moved quickly enough for their intentions. So I think this is very good. Councillor Mink.
Yes, so thank you for adding that second part. I think it is important that it comes back to council and that it is very transparent to the public as well. And I would second that.
So we have a mover and seconder. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is passed unanimously. And thank you again to the donor. Moving on to item 4.5, report LLS 1726, re 2026-2030, Joint Compliance Audit Committee, terms of reference. Does council have any questions around this? Seeing none, the recommended motion is on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder for this? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Todd. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to item 4.6, Report LLS 1826, reappointment to the Heritage Business Improvement Area Board of Directors. Does council have any questions or comments on this? I did mention we have a lot of administrative type business this evening. Any questions on this? If not, can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Todd, second by Councillor Mink. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. And welcome Laura Ben to the Heritage Business Improvement Area Board of Directors. 4.7, Report PRC 0526, re-update to the Parks, Recreation and Culture Facility and Parks Allocation Policy. Does council have any questions in regards to this particular policy? Councillor Mink?
So I have a comment, sort of, and then maybe a question. So I think this is a little more broad, but the policy, but just some feedback on the residents first with our programming. I actually did get a complaint from somebody in another municipality, which, of course I had empathy for them that they had to wait, but at the same time, I think it sort of affirmed that this is working and that our residents are getting into these programs first. It was a difficult conversation because this person from the other community felt that they had every right to have first sign up in Port Hope. So it was a little bit of a discussion I had to have with that person. So I thank you for this policy. I think it's important that that's expanded to not just programming, but facilities and use of space. Can I just ask, though, I'm putting you on the spot maybe, but do you have feedback on that residents first, aside from my own experience? Is there anything that you can share?
Thanks for the question. Overwhelmingly, the rollout has been very positive. We've received maybe a handful of complaints, again, from residents of other municipalities, similar to the phone call that you received. When I say handful, it may have been 5 maximum. The overwhelming comment was that this is a great idea. There are some folks in the municipality who have had opportunity to get into courses that they may have been waitlisted for previously. We did do some statistics on the first day of registration, and depending on the program area, there was still space available. Many of our programs, for example, aquatics, are still maybe 50% of our programs still available for other municipalities registering. Certain areas like fitness programs, we're up to 73% full on the first day. So it does indicate that our residents were able to get in, and the rollout was fairly smooth, all things considered. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Less.
Yeah, coincidentally, nothing to do with this report, but we were paid a very huge compliment today from the Y when the CAO there commented that by far Port Hope and Campbellford are leaders in recreation in the county. So, congrats.
I would say we're number one.
Yeah, I was just being polite.
I have just a couple of questions. Thank you very much for bringing this forward. And I was so excited to see the EDI lens transposed onto the policy. But I was actually wondering in which way, because you mentioned it in the policy, but I was wondering if you could be more specific about the ways in which the policy does reduce barriers that disproportionately impact certain groups and that actually go about correcting historic imbalances, especially here I'm thinking about access to facilities and resources for girls and women in our community.
Thank you for the question. Yes, you are correct. This was our first opportunity to apply the EDI framework to this report. So we went through the 10 questions and sort of related that framework to this allocation policy. The allocation policy is set up so that annually we can request, or organizations or community members can request time and space. And previously, time and space was typically assigned historically. And so as we see both at provincial and national level, this focus on girls in sport, both at in soccer and in baseball, which are two primary users of outdoor spaces, both organizations anticipate that those numbers are going to increase. And so this policy is set out so that we are able to entertain new requests, not to the detriment of historical requests, but so that we can balance new requests, new sport, new activations by the community, along with looking at those historic usage as well. So it also allows us to track data in terms of number of hours, who's using the space, how they're using the space, so that allows staff to identify if there are challenges or opportunities that we need to look at.
So thank you for that. And of course, sometimes correcting historic advantage means that there is a rebalancing, right?
Yes.
You can only cut the pie so many different ways, but that
Yes.
leads me actually to another question, which is there a way of collecting data around where those pain points are, where we need, in fact, more facilities, more resources, more opportunities, so that can build into us identifying what new recreational facilities we need in our municipality? Can we harness that data for those ends?
Yes, the easy answer is absolutely yes. Our ActiveNet software provides some information. We also work regularly with our sport user groups to be able to look at their registration data, where they're seeing growth, how we can accommodate it in our community. We're definitely seeing it on the ice right now as it's approached 100% capacity. So we're able to work with our user groups to see where the needs are and how we're able to meet that. We're in a good position right now with our outdoor spaces, but as our community grows, it will become more problematic. And so looking at that data will become critical.
Thank you. And maybe this is just a follow-up to the director, and maybe at some point, without having to put a motion on the table, we might be able to get a report to this council to give us just a sense of where we're at in terms of growth and in terms of what we have, and at what point are we going to really need to seriously think about developing, a future plan that maybe extends beyond what we've planned for previously, given that there's so many changes potentially in front of us?
Yes, absolutely. One of the projects that is on our work plan this year is updating the Parks and Trails plan for that exact reason, specifically to outdoor spaces, and then phasing in additional requirements for facilities. So knowing that, our team is working hard to be able to analyze data. Some of the data is new, related to, for example, resident or non-resident information. So we're gaining ground in being able to articulate and analyze what that information is moving forward. I think we need to collaborate with future opportunities related to the demographics. Right now, we anecdotally say our participation in recreation is increasing. Is it a result of population increase? Probably not from a drastic standpoint, but it probably has an impact. So working again with our planning team as to being able to use data specifically for informing what the future looks like. I have a gut feeling we're kind of on the cusp. Something is coming. We just need to know what that is and how we're preparing for that in the community.
Councillor Less. Thank you.
We don't necessarily need to build more facility. We can take our instructors and put them out in the community and in terms of alternate locations, such as we do with daycare. I know that the Y, for instance, has a daycare facility at the local public school, and they actually have a kitchen that caters to the Terry Fox kids. So by moving things out, we don't have to build ourselves. Just a thought.
Yeah, it is highlighted in our leisure services master plan about opportunities for shared space, community use of space. If you look historically at community use of schools, I remember a time we did all of our recreation programming in school before the recreation center and some of the community spaces at Jack Burger were available. So it is working through that collaboration. We've done some high-level brainstorming about that rural use and spaces available in the rural area, not only for rural participants, but for all participants of the municipality. So more work to be done, but again, it's the data that drives that work and how we align those with the proper spaces and opportunities for trying something new and reaching out to the community for identifying those gaps, as well as what they might like to see in their own neighborhoods.
Thank you. Councillor Clare.
Sorry, I'm going to piggyback on this to ask another question, just because we're reaching the end of our agenda and it's still early in the evening. So I did have a question. I was spent a lot of time at the skate park and pump track this weekend, as usual, and it was bustling, so full that people were lining up to get a turn, which is always amazing to see. I did have a couple of conversations with folks that were not from Port Hope that are seeing this now as a destination, which we knew would be the case with that. But I also had a question about the basketball that we removed to make room for the pump track, and I wondered if we could have an update on the new basketball that's coming in.
Absolutely. We know that outdoor kind of passive space is a priority. So partially, I believe the reason why we received the Ontario Trillium funding for the outdoor basketball court and multipurpose. So we are in the procurement stage for the court, which will be installed at Rapley Park. We are hopeful that there will be a point in time this season that space will be able to be used. That's probably being optimistic, but we're hopeful, as well as some other, again, opportunities through the review of the Parks and Trails plan about some locations that may in the future be identified for other court locations.
It may not be that ambitious, because I know there were people at the pump track on Christmas Day this year. So outdoor stuff can be used.
Thank you very much for that, and really appreciate the Q&A too. The recommended motion for this report is listed on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder for this? Moved by Councillor Mink, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. We have no notice of motions this evening. Moving on to updates and new business. The first update is it was announced last week that the Port Hope Police Services Board has extended Chief Tim's contract as Chief of Police, extending his leadership through March 2030. This approval is exciting for the community and speaks to the Chief's exceptional leadership and his meaningful contributions to the service and to the wider community. We congratulate the Chief on this extension, and we look forward to continuing to work with him. Councillor Luss, did you want to add anything to that at all?
Yeah, when we discussed extension, we said we compared to where we were to where we are now in terms of community engagement. And the Chief that's his forte, operational excellence, and he has support now of Inspector that we hired away from the OPP, who didn't appreciate it, but we got her, and she's excellent. So she's happy, helping out with operations. The morale of the force has risen to an extremely good level. And we have a number of people vying for sergeant and staff sergeant positions. So it's all good.
Thank you. Yes, it just goes to show how impactful a person can be on organizational culture. Moving on to the next announcement, which is Float Your Fanny Down the Ganney. How exciting. It's returning this weekend, hopefully no snow, to the mighty Ganaraska River on Saturday. Please note that the downtown area and nearby streets close to the race route will be busy throughout the day, and enthusiastic paddlers and crazy crafters will be out and about. Motorists are, of course, reminded to please slow down, be patient, watch for pedestrians crossing the streets and paths, and thank you for helping to keep everyone safe while we celebrate this long-standing community tradition. Look forward to seeing everybody out on Saturday. Moving on to ward boundary and council composition review updates, I'd also like to take a moment to give you an update on this item. In 2025, the municipality began a review of the council structure and ward system to ensure that they continue to meet the needs of our growing and evolving community. This work considers, as has been mentioned before, factors such as population changes, geography, community history, shared interests, and effective representation for all residents. We have now entered phase 2 of the engagement process. Last week, residents had the opportunity to attend a number of drop-in sessions to speak directly with our consultants, Watson and Associates, to ask questions and to share their perspectives. I want to remind everyone that the online survey remains open, and I strongly encourage all residents to take a few moments to participate before the deadline of April 19th. Your feedback is essential and will play a key role in shaping how our community is represented into the future. And for more information and to complete the survey, please visit engage.porthope.ca. New nuclear at Wesleyville Point, information sessions. As we heard earlier this evening, there are a number of information sessions happening this week. The Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, IAC, and the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, CNSC, are commencing a second comment period on the proposed new nuclear at Wesleyville project. In-person information sessions will be held on April 10th from 2 to 8 p.m. at the Jack Berger Sports Complex, which is 60 Highland Drive, April 11th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. There's going to be a booth at Float Your Fanny down the Ganney, and then there's going to be a number of Zoom opportunities that are available to the public. More information is available on these opportunities at our website, porthope.ca. And before I turn it over to council members for any updates that they would like to share, I'm going to turn it over to the clerk for some important election updates.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Those are very exciting updates, I think, happening in the community. And another exciting project, of course, is the upcoming municipal election. So wanted to provide two very quick updates to residents, interested candidates, as well as council and members of the public. So wanted to advise that the MMAH, which is the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, has released the provincial forms for all interested candidates who want to run in the municipal election. So these are forms that you would need to complete from the province in order to file your nomination to run for the municipal election. If you haven't already downloaded those forms from the provincial website, please go to porthopevotes.ca. The forms are available there. If you're having trouble downloading the forms, because these are provincial forms and sometimes they can be a little finicky, please contact the clerk's office at clerk@porthope.ca or just call us at our central line, and we're happy to provide you with a copy of the forms or help you walk through the process with you. The second thing I just wanted to let our residents know that we are going to be hosting the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in conjunction with our clerk's office. We'll be hosting a candidate information session on April 29th, right here in council chambers at 6 p.m. It'll be from 6 to 8 p.m. where any person who is interested in running for municipal office is welcome to attend. No registration required. You can learn from the ministry directly about the roles and responsibilities of being a council member. We will be providing some information on the nomination process. Both myself and the deputy clerk will be available to answer any questions at that time. And we will also be continuing and providing more opportunities to ask questions. But this is a really great session if you are new to the process, or even if you are, if you've ran before and you just have more questions about financial filing obligations or any other information from the ministry which would be valuable. We will have members of the ministry at that session who will be available to answer questions. So I encourage anybody who's interested to attend. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, there's no registration required for that evening.
That is correct, Madam Mayor.
Fantastic. Councillor Clare.
So in case you're a person out there who likes to plan your weekends further ahead than a week. It is April, which is the month that hosts Earth Week. And so I just thought I'd share a quick announcement, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Adam, who will really hype it up, of a great event that's happening on Sunday, April 26th, to celebrate the end of Earth Week as a municipality. And we've got a whole bunch of things going on at Town Park Recreation Centre, including the second annual Sustainability Expo, which will be kind of hands-on workshops and exhibits that you can explore about cool green initiatives happening across our community and things we can all be doing. There's also lots of exciting things happening adjacent to that I'll pass over to Councillor Adam to speak to. Putting him on the spot, I don't think he minds.
Deputy Mayor, yes, please, over to you. I know you've been very busy planning a very significant portion of that day too.
Yeah, we're slowly getting ready for a wonderful event in Port Hope. So every year, a lot of people realize that every year I do a community cleanup, both in the spring and in the fall. So this year's community cleanup will be on the same day, on April 26th. And we're getting the community together, and we're going to couple it in with the Mayor's Challenge, the county's Mayor's Challenge, to get Port Hope clean. But this year, I thought, why not do it a little bit bigger and a little bit better? So so we're going to amplify that by, the cleanup is going to start at the Port Hope Rec Center. We're hoping that people can come out around noon. And then at 12:30, we're going to go out to our different locations. I have 15 different locations that I have identified that need a little extra cleanup. And we're not blaming that on anybody. Let's be honest. During the winter, we've all looked outside on garbage day and seen the garbage flying down the road, and we didn't all chase it down. So it did kind of, a lot of that garbage gets accumulated into the snowbanks. And even though we still have snow today, and I don't want to talk about that, that snow melts, and then the garbage is still there. So we're going to get out there, we're going to get it all cleaned up, and so at 12:30, we're going to go out to our different locations, we're going to clean up the garbage, then we're going to come back to the rec center after by 2 o'clock. So we're getting about an hour and a half of cleaning, and that's including your travel time. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about it. We're going to have some fun together as a community, as I'm going to be offering a free barbecue, a community barbecue, and we're all going to sit back and have some fun doing that. And then we're also going to have a great Touch a Truck event. So we have many of the different divisions in the municipality are bringing different things. So we have fire trucks coming, we have police car coming, we've got Plowy McPlowface coming, which I think is awesome. We have a camera truck coming from the water department, and OPG is also coming with their robot dog. So this is going to give an opportunity for family to come out and enjoy all these different equipment that we don't normally get to see, and maybe the chief will allow us to get on the fire truck and push the horns and the sirens. So it'll be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it, hoping to get a few hundred people to come out and help get Port Hope spring cleaned. Now, I have a couple more updates, if that is okay. But I'll let it go back over to Councillor Clare.
Just if you want more information, it's porthope.ca/green-together with all of the schedule events and lots going on. And there's also a Facebook event that you can check out with all of the different moving parts, because there's really a lot going on. Plan to be there all day.
Okay, now back to you, Deputy Mayor.
All right, thank you. So I was going to speak a little bit about the Float Your Fanny, so thank you to the Mayor for making comments about the Float Your Fanny. I've had a wonderful opportunity over the last few months to be working with the new committee, and they are working very hard to bring this over the line. This is a very large undertaking, and this is a new committee that started in January, so they have not had a lot of time to get this over the line, and they have been working very hard to make sure that this Port Hope specific event is brought to our community. Speaking of events, I want to let everybody know that the applications are now open for the new Strategic Community Initiatives Fund Program. That's a mouthful. The Municipality of Port Hope is pleased to announce that the applications are now open for the Community Strategic Initiatives Funding Program, the CSIP. So the CSIP replaces the former Community Grants and Donation Program, and it represents a shift towards strategic investment in community-led initiatives that deliver measurable impact and align with council-approved priorities. This program supports community-led projects that advance the Municipality of Port Hope's strategic plan while enhancing social, cultural, recreational, and tourism vitality in our community. By supporting projects that align with the municipality's strategic pillars of being inclusive, prosperous, sustainable, and innovative, we empower local organizations to drive positive change and contribute to a vibrant community. Applications are now open for the first intake of the program and must be submitted by April 30th, 2026. For a robust look at the guidelines, eligibility requirements, and program details, and how to apply, visit porthope.ca/CSIP. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Deputy Mayor. And I also want to thank the Deputy Mayor for joining me last Monday along with the CAO to a visit to Queen's Park. I had requested and was granted a meeting with the Premier and a number of key ministers to talk about the position of Port Hope as a municipality in relation to the proposed Wesleyville project and the things that we need to be putting into place, especially in relation to infrastructure, even in these early days. And we had a very productive meeting with the Premier and the Minister. We had our local MPP there and also Minister Flack of Housing and Mr. Sarkaria from Transportation. I think we also left a very big impact at that table because we had brought some technology and innovation for them to experience. And a big shout out to our comms team and Kate Ingram for putting together a really amazing electronic brochure, which I think was the first of its kind for the municipality, where instead of just giving out a paper, we gave out something that actually you could press buttons on and find out a whole host of information about the municipality. Thank you very much for making us shine at that meeting. We also brought a VR headset for the ministers to put on so they could do a walk through Port Hope and see our beautiful downtown. And we also had very informative brochures that we shared around our infrastructure needs, and in particular, our pressing priorities of a water tower and a new fire station. And so we're looking forward to seeing what the results of that meeting are. And as soon as we have those updates, they'll be shared at this table. But I think all in all, it was a good experience. And I did have an opportunity for some individual one-on-one time with the Premier as well. So I think that's very productive as we continue with our own strategic plan around Wesleyville and ensuring that our best interests and our autonomy are maintained through the process. Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So I just wanted to give an update on the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority discounted rain barrel sale. So as you know, conservation authorities are merging. We don't know what programs, stewardship programs will be available in the future, so this may be your last opportunity, I don't know, to get a discounted rain barrel. This program is partially funded through the Clean Water, Healthy Land program, which is an elective stewardship program that the municipality helps fund for our local residents. We have approved that some of those funds will provide a $25 discount to rain barrels. So your applications are due June 1st, 2026. As I said, this might be your last opportunity. There's all sorts of different rain barrel combinations that you can purchase, and you can also purchase delivery as well. They'll come and deliver them for you. You can go to rainbarrel.ca/GRCA, and there's a whole sort of catalog of different rain barrels that you can choose from.
Thank you for that important reminder. Okay, we're now at question period. And before we get there, we're just going to take a brief 2-minute recess and let staff leave, and then we'll move on to our question period. Okay, now we can proceed into question period. Remember, the purpose of question period is to make inquiries of council members related to matters of municipal business. It's not meant as an avenue to ask questions to staff. If you have questions specifically for council members, you can ask them now. And if there's anything operational in nature, we'll definitely take down your question. We'll pass it on to the requisite staff person. And if you'd like to come up, you can identify your name, and our staff will turn on the microphone for you. Before we get to the public, are there any questions from council members this evening? Okay, seeing none, then turning it over to the public for any questions this evening. I asked the media question, but unless somebody has developed an alternative career in short order, I don't think we have any media with us this evening, but we'll wait for our public to come up.
Jim Sculthorpe, 1685 Willow Beach Road. Earlier this year, we had a presentation to council, and it came back tonight. We were given 30 days to comment. You're being given 30 days again. At that time, I asked if you could ask to extend that 30 days because the Indigenous community had been given considerably more time, and a councillor tonight asked if we would be considered or given the consideration that the Indigenous community had been given, but we were not given an answer. So I would like council to go and say 30 days is not long enough. And they did mention in their presentation that we had the opportunity to ask for more time. So I think you, as a council, have that opportunity, and I would ask you to do that, because I think 180 days for consultation is very small on a 14-year project that costs $200 billion. I think we need to ask for more time in this opportunity for our community to talk.
Thank you for that. And to answer your question, yes, that has been brought up. It's a federally regulated process, so we can ask, but it is a process that is set in place. But I can also assure you that we have a number of staff members that are working literally 24/7 on providing council with the information that we need and responding to each step of this process. And while I don't want to really get into it at this point, there is a distinction between what is considered a jurisdiction and what is considered a rights holder for the purposes of this process. So Indigenous nations are rights holders, jurisdictions are the federal government, the province, and the municipality, but jurisdiction under the IAC process is limited, as you heard this evening, to federal jurisdiction.
The other question I have is, again, watching the presentation tonight, there was no discussion about agriculture, and agriculture is an extremely important business in our community. And I would ask council and staff to continually ask the impact of this project on agriculture in our community.
Thank you, and that's duly noted. And I just also want to add that in addition to that, there were a number of other things that at first glance are missing, and we are on it. But thank you for raising that again. Councillor Clare.
I just, if I can, and provide just a little clarity, though the 180 days does appear to be just for phase one, which is the planning of the impact assessment. I just scanned the document, there are 4 subsequent phases, including a post-decision phase. So I think the 180 days is just this first phase. So there will be also public participation. It's outlined in a table that I'm not able to read the whole document yet. But if that is in any way helpful, that the 180 days isn't the full process or the full public participation.
I also appreciated the councillors' questions to the presenters today And in my opinion, I felt that the presenters were very poor at their project, at their job. Thank you.
Just one other thing to also add to what Councillor Clare was describing is that under the best case scenario, a fulsome impact assessment process takes 3 to 5 years. So we're not talking about these, there's so many different steps in it, but if we're talking about the process as a whole, the most aggressive best case scenario is 3 years. More realistically, it's closer to 5 years. So it's not, it may be going quickly, but it's actually a very long and thorough process with lots of point of engagement.
Yes, but if you live on Lakeshore Road or Willow Beach Road or Wesleyville Road, you're already seeing impacts of equipment, noise. It's already happening in our community.
Yes, definitely. They are starting on those early stages of the process, but it is a long process. So unfortunately, I can't tell you that that's going to stop anytime soon. Yeah.
It's not going to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayor and Council. It's clear to me through many discussions with members of council, a previous CAO, a previous Director of Environmental Services, and yourself, Mayor, that no Community Advisory Committee or CAC has been in place as stipulated in the legal agreement. Yet staff and PHAI at the February 17th quarterly presentation to council maintain that municipal staff acts as the Community Advisory Committee or CAC. Can you clarify and confirm that as of the February 17th council meeting, no CAC has been in effect?
Thank you for that question. It's the first time I'm hearing that staff acts as in that capacity.
No, I didn't say staff. I said staff maintains that municipal council acts as the community advisory.
No, I think
committee.
I heard staff, that you said staff.
I may have misspoke.
Okay. No, staff definitely does not take on that role.
No. Okay.
And by virtue of not having a standalone separate committee, that is the role of council, but we're happy to provide you with a fulsome answer from a staff perspective, unless the CAO would like to say something about it.
Sure. Through you, Chair, to Mr. Green. Yeah, in the legal agreement, by default, the council can serve as the CAC, right? As representatives of the community, they are the spokespeople for the community, and that's why we are providing a terms of reference to council coming shortly through CNL. We're going to provide that terms of reference to bring council up to speed on their roles and responsibilities under the CAC to meet all the legal obligations within the legal agreement.
So you're bringing up to speed, but to date, there has been no CAC as stipulated in the agreement and carried out by municipal council. And as I say, I've spoken to all of them, and the mayor's email has said that there was no CAC, so it should be an easy.
I would say that the functioning of the CAC, not formally recognized as the CAC, but council has been acting, receiving quarterly updates from CNL, working with residents on different properties, and providing advice to the residents and through CNL, through the legal agreement. So I would say that in de facto, they have been providing the CAC services, but not formally. That's why we are trying to formalize the process with the terms of reference coming from CNL to educate council on the roles and responsibilities of the CAC.
I appreciate you saying it hasn't been operated formally. That's pretty straightforward. And the specifics to the legal agreement that, well, first of all, the CAC has never been mentioned publicly until February 17th. So a community advisory committee that community is not aware of is not very useful. And the legal agreement says it's to provide public input on the project planning and implementation. There's been no request for public input. I don't know if council has received all the studies and reports in regards to the project, or if they've got updates on complaints and done the steps in the CAC.
Yeah, we certainly do get regular reports right here at the council table, and there are opportunities for updates on complaints as well through the representatives of CNO.
So just to be clear, there has been no CAC as stipulated in the legal agreement to date.
There has been, by default, the council has been acting in that role.
Okay. In a July 2024 email to you, I asked you if you were going to implement the Community Advisory Committee, and you said, I stated clearly there are no discussions or plans for a CAC.
A separate standalone one, just to be clear, but I think Councillor Clare would like to say something.
I think we need to be careful with the wording, Cameron, because the legal agreement does not require there to be a CAC. The legal agreement says if there is no CAC, the municipality is responsible for performing the functions of a CAC. So while we're saying there has not been a CAC, it's because there has not been a CAC, but what we're saying is that the functions should be performed by council in lieu of a CAC. I appreciate that you want to look to the past. For me, I care about this issue. I've been talking about this a long time as well. I think what matters right now is that we are getting that clarity, and council is being provided now with the opportunity to be brought up to speed to make sure that we are properly covering all of those functions, given that there is no CAC.
Claire,
So it's just being careful about
Claire,
the terms.
Claire, it's not an argument. The legal agreement says if the municipality shall carry out the intent of the legal agreement. And
Thank you. Do you have another question?
Well, it seems to be now clarity in this. So I've spoken to many councillors, and it's been publicly said that there's no CAC. So we'll poll the councillors and see if they've been members of the CAC.
What is the question to council?
I think, are we saying that council has been carrying out the function of the Community Advisory Committee? And if that's the statement that you're saying they have been, we'll poll the councillors and ask them if they have been.
Well, I think that is exactly what the CAO says is coming forward in order to allow us to actually answer your question. We're not prepared to answer that question this evening in the way that you're posing it.
I appreciate that. It's coming forward. Thank you very much.
Any further questions from the public this evening?
I have a couple of simpler ones, I think. What was the address for the rain barrel thing? I'm sorry, it went right by me.
Well, I'll talk to you afterwards, but I think it's rainbarrel.ca/GRCA.
Hang on, now I can't hear. Okay.
Let me just see if I still have it. I believe it was rainbarrel.ca/GRCA.
And that was April?
No, June 1st is the deadline.
Oh. Okay. When you were talking to the premier, were you talking about the nuke thing? Did you get a feeling or anything like that? Like, are we getting walked over here like one of those
No, Ed.
NCO things?
We are not getting walked over in this process. We were there with a very clear agenda. We were there with a very clear ask. We have a strategy. We are actually going to be articulating that strategy in very short order. It's going to be going out in everybody's tax bill, and you will be able to see exactly the steps that the municipality has taken and will be taking throughout to the end of this year.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of got the impression from the presentation tonight that unless it's a Fed deal, it don't matter. Like that's what that's what I gathered from what the people were saying here. It was kind of shocking to me that they would say, well, unless it had anything to do with federal, that they weren't going to do it. So I mean, like if you're moving a river, or I mean, they were talking tornadoes and earthquakes and tsunamis or whatever it was they were talking about. If they're doing something to alter a wetland or something like that, is that municipal or is that a federal?
Well, I think that the easiest way to answer this is to say that we are navigating a process that involves the federal government. Our process crosses the provincial government. Our process is also crossing with our neighboring Indigenous nations, and then we have ourselves as our municipality. And so every step of the process, it's complicated because it's multi-jurisdictional. And we are navigating it with, I think, a lot of attention to detail and trying to put our best interests forward at every step of the way, understanding that there are certain parts of the process where we have more limited influence. There's other areas where we have more influence, but we know what's in front of us and we are steering the ship the best we can under those circumstances.
Is the municipality planning on having a more broad input from the local community? Like, are we gonna rally in front of Pacini's office, or like, is there any kind of major push coming?
We are going to be providing the opportunity for a very robust community engagement process. So to date, OPG has been doing a lot of engagement with the community. The municipality will be also doing its own engagement process, completely separate from the province, completely separate from the federal government, completely separate from OPG. We are pilot testing some engagement processes right now. And the idea is that once we have more information about the project, and namely potentially a choice in technology, that we will then start our own engagement process so that people will be engaging on concrete details of a project rather than abstractions.
Good. I just hope this stays front and center in the municipality, that it is that important, and maybe all the different groups can get together and do a protest or something, Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, there will be lots of opportunities for engagement.
All right, thank you.
Any final questions from the audience? Oh, I see one more potentially coming forward.
Jim Sculthorpe, 1685 Willow Beach Road. Just a comment you made. The other day at the open house on Toronto Road, one of the engineers there said, yes, we're looking at 4 different fuels. You just said, we're going to hopefully find out what one it is. I mean, there are 3 enriched and 1 can-do. We make can-do in Canada. We don't make enriched. So it would really, have you had a discussion with anyone that's told you what fuel they're using? Because I was told that they were just going to take a broad view of all of the nuclear all over the world. And so they'll do this whole project. And then when they're finished all talking to us and sort of, I think I might say, probably brainwashing us all that this is a fabulous thing for us all, that then they'll pick the fuel they use.
No, Jim, it's my understanding that there's going to be a decision made on the technology choice by the end of this year. I don't know if the CAO wants to weigh in on that at all.
Just sure, through you, Chair. Yeah, my understanding is there's actually three technology choices that are on the table right now. And through the impact assessment, we're hoping by year end, we will know that technology. And as the mayor said, that's when we're going to start our community engagement, when we have concrete information, what we can present to residents and have an understanding of the type of technology that will be deployed.
Because it would be nice to use a Canadian technology. Maybe they'll put an enrichment plant here and we can enrich our own uranium from or Cameco.
That's
Thank
a big
you.
discussion, which the municipality is not part of.
I guess not. Somebody's waging a war around the world right now about enriched uranium, so.
It is a complex world. Any final questions from the audience this evening?
Hi, this is my name's David Erland. I'm on Ward Street in Port Hope. I just have I want to ask a bit more of a specific question, like Ed's question, but a bit more specific. First, I want to just say that I appreciate how much energy you've put into trying to clarify with the Impact Assessment Agency whether the municipality gets any particular standing or regard in the course of their deliberations. I appreciate that you've been really trying to press for that and to try and ensure that the municipality does get some consideration as such. And then it occurs to me that when we learned that you went to Queen's Park, it was almost like like an end run around that whole process to try and ensure. No, I'm kidding, but just to try and ensure that we get some consideration as a municipality from somewhere. And it would be appropriate that we might get that at Queen's Park. And I did see something online, a picture of you guys all there. And people were wearing visors and things like that, like video game kind of stuff, that I gather was part of the presentation. I understand that you were there sort of presenting to Queen's Park, to the provincial government on our behalf. My question is, do we get to find out what was in that presentation? Or do we get to watch through those goggles and see what they were looking at? Or,
Yes, well, absolutely. I had the opportunity to write about the presentation in the mayor's corner, and in terms of the VR set, that was, as I mentioned earlier, a walk through downtown Port Hope. So when you can't get ministers or the premier to come and visit Port Hope, you can bring Port Hope to them. And they actually had the opportunity to walk through and see our downtown area. It's quite fascinating. And I'm going to let the CAO speak to this because he was very much involved in organizing this part of the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Very, very exciting opportunity to show innovation for Port Hope. So we brought two different companies together, one with data and one that had the technology to build a virtual reality walkthrough of Port Hope. We wanted to demonstrate innovation. We're doing things differently. We're doing municipal government differently here, really trying to do that, bringing different people on with different skill sets. So we're trying to show that innovation for the premier. I do have the opportunity of actually posting that walkthrough. You don't need a headset. I can actually post it. I'll figure out how I can do it with my comms team, and we can post it online, and you will be able to walk through and see exactly what the premier saw, the walk through downtown Port Hope, down Walton Street, past the Capitol Theatre, Town Hall, and right out to the pier. So and it gives a bit of historical context as well. So I will endeavor to get that up on the website.
So if I could just get a little bit more clarity, it sounds like at least some part of this presentation was kind of functioning as a travelogue to introduce the people at Queen's Park to Port Hope virtually, as the case may be.
Absolutely. It was an introduction to Port Hope in general. It was an introduction to Port Hope in terms of economic development and tourism, far beyond anything to do with the Wesleyville project. We talked about some of our housing developments that are currently underway in the municipality. There's 1,255 new housing projects that are underway in the municipality. We were able to show the lands that are ready for more housing development, the lands that are potentially for use of industrial development. We talked about the costs of infrastructure that we need in order to maximize some of those lands. So there was a big part of the presentation that was laying the land and sharing information about Port Hope in general.
So was there any part of this presentation that did concern the OPG proposal for Wesleyville?
Of course, yes, that was definitely part of the conversation and what we needed to continue to have in place in order for us to be growth ready, in order for us to have the resources, both the financial resources, the human resources to continue to do this work, and what some of our immediate infrastructure needs are in order to contemplate, for example, the increase in housing that we want to be seeing in the community, even the things that are already in the works, and the need for a fire station in this community as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Any final questions? Okay, seeing none. This concludes our business to be covered on today's agenda, and I'm in a position to adjourn the meeting at 8:16 p.m. The Committee of the Whole is adjourned. Thank you very much.